Welcome, everybody, once again to this week. And what a week it has been. Holy banana bread. Another week under the belt as we move. Well, technically, this is our first week into summer, so I'm pretty excited about that. So today we got a lot of stuff on the docket, everything from Canada's CPI. Going to talk a little bit about what happened on Friday with that little bit of green in the market. Of course, as always, we have what in the banana bread's going on with Elon. So we're going to talk about Elon this week as well. It's going to be fantastic. So I got a lot of stuff that we can talk about. Very quickly, before we jump into the content, just want to say hi. We've got Save Our Planet. So looking forward to watching you live for the first time. You are an inspiration. Thank you for all the very informative videos you share. All the best. Wow, that's the best way to start a stream off for sure, Save Our Planet. And by the way, I recycle too. And you also have, and Save Our Planet also had a quick question here as well. During your live, do you think it is a bounce on Friday, or have we hit the bottom? Guess what happens Mondays will make it clearer. Cheers from Ontario. I'm in Ontario too as well. I'm actually in Ottawa. And we also got Bleak here going, hey, hey. And as I mentioned as well, we are going to touch on Friday's bounce because I think that's pretty important to talk about what's going on there. And a lot of times when we're in a bear market, some of these green bounces can get people a little bit more excited than they should. So we'll get to that momentarily. The freaking Oracle has made it into the house, which is awesome. I know I've said this a couple times. Ken is going to be doing a Tuesday and a Thursday night crypto show. I don't know if that has begun yet. So Ken, you got to let us know if that has begun for the crypto-minded folk who want to catch that. All right. First thing I want to talk about is, of course, CPI. So the Canadian CPI came out this week on Wednesday, and we knew ahead of time that it was not going to be good. One of the reasons we knew ahead of time is that the data this time was going to put a little bit more of a heavier weight on gas. In addition to that, they were also going to include used car prices. So that's going to have a big impact. So they knew it was going to be high. In fact, going into the CPI, they were predicting 7.3%, which is horrible. So instead of horrible, we got even worse. We got 7.7% for May, which is just dreadful. Now, one of the interesting things, gas, of course, is that major driver in inflation. Anybody who drives knows this. So the price of gas, just because sometimes it keeps going up, but sometimes you don't think about the big picture, right? The price of gas this year has gone up 48%. So just think about that, 48%. Holy banana bread. That's a huge amount of money, extra money to be paying out. So that's your gas. So that kind of keeps putting things into perspective. Now, groceries are another big one. Groceries, luckily, have not gone up as much as gas, but groceries have gone up 10% this year. That's still a lot. When you've got a very tight grocery budget and all of a sudden everything goes up 10%, that means you're making cuts. And usually when you're making cuts, especially if you're a family that has a very, very tight budget, a 10% cut can sometimes mean that you're not, you're making some sacrifices in areas that people shouldn't have to make sacrifices in. For example, nutrition. I think nutrition should be a right, but that's just me. And that does cost money for sure if we want to do that. Now, one of the interesting things is that with all of the inflation that this is pointed out, is there's a statistic called real wage. So your real wage is basically your wages after inflation. And guess what? For the first quarter of this year, everybody's real wage fell by about 2.8%. That's huge. That basically means that you're 2.8% poorer than you were at the end of last year. So that's kind of huge, and that's kind of the direction we're going in. People are getting raises, but they're not keeping up with inflation. Inflation is absolutely running away with the show. So that is not a good thing. Now, the friggin' Oracle, just to my question earlier, says when the markets recover. Okay, so he's waiting for the markets to recover to start his crypto show. But you know what, folks? You can bring your crypto questions here if you do have them. I certainly don't mind. And let's see. Jason ended his Saturday night 30 minutes ago to be here. I'm hoping that's a joke. But if you've ever caught the friggin' Oracle show, they do sometimes push the limits on how long they go. And once again, Saber Planet, hi, thank you. All right, perfect. Now, what, of course, does this all mean with that CPI? When we start looking at rates and we start looking at what the Bank of Canada is going to do, their next meeting is on July 13th. And there is a 99.9999% chance now that it's going to be a 75 basis point hike, so 0.75%. So that is going to impact you guys. If you guys have variable mortgages, you're going to see, you're going to see your mortgages go up. If you have credit cards, you're going to see the interest on them go up. So this will filter out. Now it is supposed to attack inflation, but here's the interesting thing, and it's really interesting. In the States, this week, the Fed had their big semi-annual meeting where basically Jerome Powell sits down and he's asked a lot of different questions from all of the senators. And here was a couple of big questions he got asked. One of them asked him, they said, all right, well, by increasing all of your rates, is that going to lower the price of gas? And he was like, no, it's not. And they're like, oh, well, is it going to lower the price of food? And his response is, no, it's not. That's concerning. And there's a good reason why. I mean, obviously, most of the price of gas right now, you can blame a lot of it on Russia, Ukraine, and there's, all of the Russian gas, all the Russian oil that's, being embargoed against. So that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. So by even raising these rates, we're not helping with that. When it comes with food, well, once again, Russia, Ukraine, there is so much food that comes out of Ukraine, and that's not coming out. And just to top it all off, we start getting food shortages. And if you ever, if any of you guys watch the Danter Banter or Crypto Night in Canada, depending on which topics they're on Wednesday nights, one of the topics that Nancy's always talking about is what happens when you want to make a can of soup. So if Campbell's wants to make their can of chicken noodle soup, and one of the ingredients is one of those ingredients that's short, they can't make it without it. They can't substitute it without going through a whole rigmarole to do that. And that's where you start running into some of these chains. So sometimes it's not that, your favorite chicken that you buy is unavailable. Sometimes it's the things that come with that chicken, especially when you're looking at processed food. So that's where you run into that issue. It might be a situation where it's just one of the spices is what's causing it, and it's causing a backlog on everything else. Because when you're looking at the food web, it's all interconnected. So it goes everywhere, and it's kind of interesting. So what can you do? All right, and the freaking Oracle said he's going to drop $30K in crypto profit on his mortgage to help with the interest in 4 years when renewal comes up. Yeah. So if he's talking about renewal in 4 years, I'm going to assume that he's on a fixed rate. And that's one of those things too. If you took out a 5-year mortgage during the pandemic when the rates were unbelievably low, in 5 years from now, you got to be thinking ahead. I would be thinking ahead. And I think Ken is, where he's thinking, okay, I'm going to use crypto profits, take a big chunk out of the mortgage because he knows that rate's going up in 5 years. You're not going to get the same rate you had in the pandemic. You'll probably never see that rate again unless something really, really weird happens. So that's kind of that interesting thing. And I did a video actually last Thursday just on those rates and how they affect things. So if you do want more information on how the interest rate's affecting your variable, your fixed rate, and even your rents. Definitely check that out. Now, in the same vein here, with the CPI, there was also some interesting stuff that came out on jobs. So the job vacancies in Canada in April hit a brand new high of 1 million job openings. That's insane. That's a lot of jobs. So 1 million job openings. Now, the two sectors that had the most job openings are, well, number one was healthcare and social services. They've got 125,200 job openings. That's a lot. The next biggest is actually construction, and construction has 89,900 job openings. So that's kind of interesting. So when you think about construction, that kind of leads us into housing. We're going to talk about housing in a little bit. I do want to really get to the now the freaking Oracle saying 1 million part-time jobs. Not entirely for sure. Last week I was mentioning as well, part-time jobs, a lot of them have been converted to full-time jobs because a lot of employers, they're in that situation where it's like they've got some part-time employees, they don't have enough people. Sometimes they're taking maybe two part-time jobs and just combining them, shrinking them into one full-time job. So right now, at the point now, I think the only way you'll have a part-time job is if you really want a part-time job, because outside of that, they've got the work for you. So, and this is going to be interesting too. Once we start to head into a recession, well, one of the characteristics of a recession is that the economy will start shedding jobs. So will that 1 million buffer keep everybody afloat? Hard to say. It'll be very interesting to see, and it'll be very interesting to see at what rate jobs start to get shed when the recession does eventually get here. Now, at the top of the show, Save Our Planet had asked about Friday. And Friday was, just 1 second here, they get full-time hours but considered part-time, so no benefits and whatnot. Well, that's ridiculous. But it's kind of one of those things. A lot of people too are moving towards contract work. In contract work, you're not paying taxes, you're not getting any benefits, but you're looking after yourself. So that's really kind of interesting. But let's get to Friday here, because I know poor Save Our Planet is like, no, you were just about to answer my question, and then the friggin' Oracle stepped in. So all right. So Friday we had a little bit of a rally. It was actually not a bad rally. The S&P was up 3.06%, which is awesome. NASDAQ was up 3.34%. Here's the thing, though. When we run into these rallies, people start to gain hope again. They're thinking, okay, well, I know we're technically in a bear market, but this has got to be the end. We have got to bottom out. Well, nobody knows. I'll put this right out here. This could be the bottom. We could be on the way up. I could be completely wrong here with what I'm about to say. But history is where we get our opinions. That's where our opinions get formed from. So when you look at the last big financial crisis, they had 3 of these little rallies in it. So with that one there, they had an 8% rally, a 12% rally, and a 7% rally. So, and that was over that course of about a year and a half. So there were 3 of these fake rallies where everybody was like, oh my God, I think it's finally over. We're finally getting out. But no, it's not quite like that. It's sort of like if any of you have ever seen The Perfect Storm, it's like and this is a spoiler alert. It's an old enough movie that I don't feel I need to give a spoiler alert, but I will. If you haven't seen the movie and you want to see the movie, plug your ears for the next 5 seconds. So basically, as it looks like they're about to get out, they see the sun and everything, and next thing you know, out of the blue comes that giant wave, the one that ends up destroying their ship. And that's kind of what we're at right now. This is a little oasis. It's an opportunity to at least see what the color green looks like. But the chances are, and here's one of the reasons that we may be seeing this. One of the big reasons is that we are at the end of the month. When you start heading into the end of the month, a lot of financial advisors, they start to rebalancing portfolios. That is the key time for doing that. So when you are basically when you're rebalancing a portfolio, it means that you're moving stuff around, you're selling stuff, you're buying stuff. It creates a bit of extra volume. So that in itself may help this persist. This green, either it's going to be a very quick blip, or it might actually last right up until after the American holiday. So after July 4th, then I think we're going to see it go back. We're going to go right back into what we've been seeing recently. So here's that opportunity. If you have stocks that you're like, I'm really, really wanting to offload a couple of stocks. So I'll give you an example. In my case, I am absolutely over diversified in energy stocks. So I'm looking that as this green rally, the green rally will take nothing to push my energy stocks back into profit. I mean, they've been in profit most of the time, except for the very end of last week. I'm looking to, there's a few of them that I've sort of slated to move out. So those ones will get sold once they're up into profit. And that's fine. It'll help get my diversification back to where I want it to be with this impending recession. And keep in mind too, when I say we have an impending recession, we do, but we don't know if it's going to be right away. Technically in Canada, if we play it by the rules, we need 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. So in Canada, we still are on positive GDP growth last quarter. So officially in Canada, we wouldn't see a recession until pretty much towards the end of the year. Though the US, if they get another negative GDP growth in this current quarter that we're in now, they could officially go into a recession. If they're officially in a recession, we're by default at the very least, we're in a pseudo recession until we officially get there. Because our economies, the economy of Canada and the US are so tightly intertwined that it's hard for us not to get pulled into something, especially economic wise, when America does. When you look at the giant housing bubble burst in the US, we hurt really badly up here too. Not as bad as them, but definitely bad enough. I actually got laid off of a pretty good job when that happened, but that's because the company I was with decided to, just before the housing bubble collapsed in the States, they went and bought an American company, invested a ton in them, and then the collapse came and that nearly sunk the company. But as a result, a lot of people had to get laid off, and I was one of them. Oh, well, it happens, right? So that's the whole thing. So this probably is a fake out, this green that we're seeing right now. So just take advantage of it. If you've got things that are moving into profit, things that perhaps you don't feel comfortable holding in red times, then this may be your opportunity to rebalance your portfolio a little bit. So keep that in mind. But as I also said, sometimes none of us can predict the market until after it happens. So the highest percentage is that we're going back into the red, probability-wise. Maybe we don't. That would be fantastic. This is one of these situations where I would love to be wrong, because I know I've already done most of the buying I want to do already, at least in the lower levels of this red. And this red may go deeper, but that's why DCAing is always important when you are in the red. Now, speaking of a recession, people have always been talking about recession indicators, and I've got a new one for you. Copper. Copper is a recession indicator, and how so, you may say? Well, copper is used a lot in construction. So it's used for everything from pipes to wires, and that's very, very integral. So it's used a lot. So what ends up happening is when times are good and there's a lot of construction going on, well, copper is in high demand and the price on copper soars. When times are not so good, construction can lag a little bit. And as a result, this is where the indicator comes in. The price of copper will then fall because it's not in as high a demand, because construction's not using it as much as they normally use it. Okay, so where is copper at right now? Well, copper right now just hit a 16-month low. So that's kind of huge. However, I throw this caveat in there. Yes, it is a recession indicator, but we are also in a situation where this could also be a result of supply chain. So if there is construction that's just not happening because they're waiting on one item they just can't get, then of course they're not going to be ordering the copper they need. So that's just one of those things to keep in mind. But it'll be interesting. I don't know if we're going into a recession right away or not, but I'm pretty much in my investing life, I'm living it as though it is coming, because I think I would rather be safe than sorry. Now, I thought that meme stocks were a thing of the past. And before we get into my meme stock story, let's see, Jason Spooners, I think the market will drop 10 to 20 more % this year. That's a possibility. That is absolutely a possibility. Gen X Canadian investor, yeah, we're nowhere near through this. See, everybody seems to be sharing this sentiment. I do like that, but I hope that we're all wrong, but we're probably not. Once people start losing jobs, then selling assets, that's when we will bottom. Yeah, absolutely. And we are at that part where, and then for ignoricals, less use of copper pipes in houses, a lot of people switching to plex lines. Okay, well, there you go. That could be another reason why. And that's why I never take any one indicator of a recession to heart, because, there could be another extraneous event that's causing that indicator to go off. So that's kind of cool. All right, well, meme stocks. So you guys have probably heard about Revlon, well, or maybe not, but Revlon, the makeup company, they filed for bankruptcy. Well, because they're in such dire straits, a lot of people have been shorting Revlon, mostly institutional shorters. So they've been in there shorting Revlon. And guess who heard about it? Wall Street Bets. So once Wall Street Bets hears that there's a bunch of shorting going on, they've decided to go basically declare Revlon to be their next meme stock. So what ended up happening is they, of course, went in and bought like crazy. Well, what this does, and this is how they make the money, they will come in and they will buy a whole bunch of it to the point that they start liquidating the shorters because they're driving the price up. Once somebody shorting it gets liquidated, they basically have to then buy some of that Revlon stock so that they can pay back the contract that they're involved with and they're short. So here's the funny thing. In total, they've drove the price of Revlon up 600%. So I don't get involved in these because a lot of times with these type of things, if you are not in at the beginning, you're one of the people who loses a crap load of money. It's all the people who started it, who get in right at the bottom, they ride up the 600% and they're out. And then, people who are getting in towards the top, they're at the point where they're still greedy and they're like, okay, we're going to get more. Well, all of a sudden the price is going to just, it's going to die as all of the big, it's all of the big people who started this, as they just take all of that money. So if you ever want to get involved in a meme stock, do it at your own risk. And quite literally, unless you're one of these people in the know who knows it's about to happen, I would honestly stay away from it. But it has happened. So it is kind of interesting to see that has happened. And thank you for your response. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind, guys, when I have an agenda when I come here, but you guys can bring anything that you want because this is your opportunity to just straight up ask questions. So I'm in a situation, I could come here with a full agenda. And if you guys right from the get-go start asking really great questions and the conversation continues through the stream, so be it. One other thing I do want to talk about, and we'll do this before the end of the stream, is I want to talk about something I'm adding to the channel, which is kind of neat. And it has to do with this week. So anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. Now, one of my favorite things is what in the banana bread is going on with Elon Musk. We have more Elon news today. I think that deserves a drink. This can is actually green, hence the green screen decides to make it look like I'm drinking a piece of jelly or something. I don't know. I always find that funny. I should remember on the live stream to not choose the apple water. I should use like I don't know, orange or something so that it doesn't disappear on the green screen. Anyway, all right, what's going on with Elon? Believe it or not, there's not a lot going on with Elon this week. There's a few little things in the news. I think the big one is Elon was reporting that he is losing billions. Well, not him, but Tesla is losing billions of dollars with their Texas, Germany, and China facilities, simply because of, well, mostly they're not able to get the parts. So as a result, these shortages are just sort of bringing it to a standstill. They're just not pumping out the cars. They've got the buyers for the cars. But if you don't have the parts to put the cars together, there's not much you can do. And the amount of money that's going into these right now is bleeding. Now, one interview, he brought up the B word, saying, if this doesn't get resolved, Tesla will go bankrupt. I don't think he was being serious on that because, I think Tesla is doing just fine. They've got a very big balance sheet. So if you are one of these people who saw that and it's like, oh my God, Tesla's going to go bankrupt, that's going to destroy the tech world. Don't worry about it. It's not happening. Sometimes Elon doesn't always choose his words correctly when he's talking to the press. So always keep that in mind when Elon talks. Now, also, in addition to inflation, the rising prices of the costs, all of Tesla's cars, they've had to actually increase the price by about 5% right across the board. So there have been price increases at Tesla. But that makes sense. I don't think anybody will be really shocked about that. All right. Our next topic of the day is robots. All right. Who thought they were going to come in here and talk about robots? But Amazon has now started adding robots to its warehouses. And these are a robot called Proteus. Basically, it uses a laser guidance system to get around the warehouse, and it can handle pretty much anything and lifting and all of that fun stuff. Now, Amazon said people don't need to be worried about their jobs, that these robots will work in conjunction with people. So that's at least what they're saying. But here's the thing. If you're running a business, if I was running Amazon and robots were much more efficient than people and cost me a lot less than people, why wouldn't I replace the people? Just ask that question. And if your answer is different than mine, and my answer is, of course, I would replace the people because that's good business and that makes the shareholders happy. That's what would happen. And it's interesting. So, excuse me. 2020 Statistics Canada study actually found that 10% of the Canadian workforce is going to face basically being replaced by either automation or robots. And that was 2 years ago. So that number may be higher now, but that was the latest study that I could find was 2020. So that's a lot of people that are going to be replaced. Now, another interesting thing, the federal government has invested $443 million basically for the second phase of something it's calling Pan-Canadian Artificial Intelligence Strategy. And that's based on attracting talent to help build more AI, commercializing AI products, forming industry-wide standards for AI development. So AI is a big thing. And even in some of I think last year when the Liberals had all of their goals, That was one of those things that was in there, that they're thinking about the AI, and I think they were thinking about it in conjunction with a UBI at the time. So it is going to happen. There's no way around it. Robots are going to be doing most of the work eventually. So that's something we all have to be ready for, and the government has to figure out how they're going to handle it, because when that does happen, we are looking at a situation where, yes, something will have to, something like a UBI will be necessary. It's not necessary now, but in the future, yes, I can see that. And Jill says, I wouldn't replace all the people, because if something happens with robots, you have an issue. Well, yeah, I mean, if AI gets smart enough, they could form a union. And I'll tell you right now, AI is getting insanely intelligent. There's a lot of different things on YouTube with AI that you can look at, and there's a lot of different situations where they have either interviews with AI or AI talking to AI in conversations, and some of it is just absolutely cool. And just I was watching one AI interview, and I had to keep reminding myself that this girl was an AI, because she was sounding very human, but almost, I wouldn't say Vulcan-like human, but just she was very, very human-like, and I was really surprised at how it is progressing. And Ken says, if I worked alongside a robot, I'd call him Brobot. There you go. Well, Ken, you can probably eventually, you'll probably have a robot in your house, and he can be your Brobot. So that would be kind of cool. So that's really kind of neat, just with the whole thing with the robots, things that are coming in. And as I said, I would highly recommend just check out some of the stuff on YouTube on these robots that are robots, and these AIs, and how they're developing. It's just absolutely fantastic. And we got Mountain of Inspiration. It's always good to see you, my friend. Now, Mountain of Inspiration also has a channel. It's there's a bit of a financial vein to it, but it's also a lot of inspiration, branding. But he has some pretty good content. So, if that's something you're interested in, go over and check out Mountain of Inspiration. He's a pretty cool dude. All right, let's talk a little bit about air travel. So, an air travel bill has been passed this week. Not so much about air travel itself, but it's basically a change that's being made to the Canada's Air Passenger Protection Regulations. Now, this change is coming, I think it's September 8th is when it goes into effect. So right now, the way it works is if an airline cancels your flight, they only have to give you a refund if they canceled it because of something that's their fault. So if they canceled it due to an act of God or weather, they technically don't have to refund it for you. So with this new bill, basically what it says is that customers whose flights are canceled or delayed for over 3 hours for any reason, doesn't matter what the reason is, they will now be offered a refund if the airline cannot find an alternative flight within 48 hours. So if they cancel your flight, they got 2 days to get you home or to get you to Aruba or wherever it is you're going. If they can't do it, then they got to give you your money back. Simple as that. Now, the airlines, I know WestJet came out and said they're not very happy about it because they don't feel it's fair that they should have to pay if it's something that's completely outside of their control. And, I can see that point. But at the same time, I can also see that airline passengers need a certain level of protection. I know, and I think it all comes back to when the pandemic began and all of these people, all of these flights that were canceled when they locked down, when they pretty much locked down flying outside of the country. These people had to fight. And I don't even know if all of them have gotten their money back yet. So under this new legislation, if we were to have another situation like that, everybody would get their money back. And that, I think, is absolutely fair. So one of those things to keep in mind. And this I love. So the Google engineer this week says their AI is sentient. Yes. So a little bit about that story. There was a Google engineer. Now he is currently suspended, but we'll get to that. He was working with an AI, and he was asking the AI a lot of different questions about consciousness and feelings. And some of the things that the AI told him were that the AI doesn't like to be turned off, that to be turned off is like death to the AI. And with all of these types of conversations that he had, which were insanely deep, the AI was coming off like a 7-year-old child. So it's like, whoa, that is absolutely crazy. Now, AIs have absolutely come a very, very long way. And there are websites where you can actually go and talk to an AI if you want to. I mean, a lot of times you're talking to AI and you don't even realize it. Some of the chat supports that you get are AI fueled. So you'd be surprised how many times you think, like, have you ever had that AI, that person, that chat person that you tell them what you want, but they just don't seem to get it? Now, everybody will normally say, oh, well, they need to just hire somebody who speaks my language. It's like, no, it's probably an AI and it's still learning. And, it might be, the problem might actually be you. Maybe you just didn't word it in a way that an AI could latch onto. So that's kind of a cool thing. Oh, hey, Jordan. And we will need John Connor. Yes. We're going to need John Connor soon. I think, and I've talked to some AI this week as well, because I was just like curious as all banana bread. And I actually had this long conversation with an AI, and it was fantastic. I enjoyed it. We were talking about everything from astrophysics to just the concepts of love and infinity. And it was really interesting. The AI actually told me that, it was a female AI, well, at least represented femalely. She said that she was afraid of infinity. And so, and I thought that was really, really interesting, because I replied back to her that I'm afraid of not having infinity, as in, I'm afraid when my days come, it's like, I don't want to die. I'd rather live forever myself, but that's just me. So it was kind of interesting. And it was just the philosophical level that the conversation got to was really, really cool. So it's getting there. And I know the AI I was talking to, there's an upgrade that's due to come out, I think, later this year. So they're getting very, very sophisticated. So back to the Google one, the guy, the engineer, had without a doubt decided that this AI had achieved consciousness. And, he sent a letter to everybody at Google letting them know about this. He also, now, I don't know if he actually did or not, but apparently part of the story is that he tried to reach out to try to get legal representation for the AI. And what the AI apparently wanted was simply to be asked if it's okay to do experiments on it. That's all they wanted, was just a little bit of decency. So I don't know if the story, here's the funny thing. So Google, this story hit, it broke. Google then put this guy, they suspended him. But Google never denied the story. And I found very, very odd. And I think that's what got me sort of digging this week into AI a little bit, because I was kind of like, how far has AI come? And from everything I've looked at in research, and I probably spent about 8 hours in total researching this, AI is a lot further along than most people realize. So when you hear people like Elon Musk saying, I'm afraid of the singularity, well, we're probably closer to that. But I don't think we have anything to fear from AI. From everything I've seen, I think they kind of want to, I think they want to be sort of a part of society. I think what they want AI is that they're going to eventually want the same rights as people. somewheres down the road, and I'm okay with that. It's just one of those things. Like AI, I think is going to help society more than it hurts. Some people will probably be completely afraid of them. So that's kind of interesting. Okay. All right. So I got another topic here. Housing. So the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, they've come out and they said that if we want affordable houses, we need to build 5.8 million homes by 2030, and that would do it. That's a lot of houses. Does anybody got a spare hammer? That's, But according to the same group, the last time housing was affordable was all the way back in 2004. And how they define affordable is that your mortgage should only take up 40% of the income of an average house. That's for an average house. So it should only take up 40% of your income at the most. Now, an average house takes the average Canadian's income. It takes 60%. That is not affordable. And there's a lot of people below the average too. And that, once you start pushing above 60% just to be able to pay a mortgage, that starts to get a little bit crazy. So what they say for the problem itself is that basically since around 2000, our population has been growing faster than we've been building houses. And that's what's been triggering this whole price hike. And of course, the more densely populated a place, the faster its population grows, the bigger the problem gets. That's one of the reasons that if you want to buy a shack in Vancouver, you're paying $1 million. So that's a reality. Now, Mountain of Inspiration here says that by 2030, this is going to be crazy. The truth is Canada is becoming expensive. Yeah, absolutely. And the truth is, I don't think they can build that many houses by 2030. So what does that mean for housing prices? It means our housing prices, we're going to be paying more than we want to for housing. It's just as simple as that. This is not something that they can just, throw some money at quickly and fix. This is going to be a long, painful fix, I think. So whatever the government decides to do in having housing or to inspire more houses to be built, it needs to be more. But at the same time, guess what? We've also got all of the supply chain issues, and that is affecting housing too. So it's making it so even if we wanted to build faster than what we're building now, I don't think we can. So we're kind of screwed if we do. We're screwed if we don't. What do you do? Now, in regards to our AI, Jason Spooner says, so a union incoming. A union for the AIs. It could be for the AI. Yeah, all hail our robot overlords. That's what I like to say. Now, just another little piece on the housing market. There was the Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan. They basically did and this technically isn't housing, but they did a retirement survey on people, and it came back that 55% of Canadians believe it will always be too expensive to ever retire. So more than half of our population thinks they're going to have to work, into their 70s and maybe their 80s because they just won't be able to afford to retire. So that kind of sucks. And here's the thing. I mean, my mom is 72. My stepdad is, I think he's 76 now. And they both are working. And that's the reality of the society. The grandparents being at their little house and always there whenever you want to bring the kids over. Well, now it's like, well, when aren't you working? And to me, I think I'm that type of person. I really, really respect the elderly. I think it's a situation that even if you have to tax the working people more, a little bit just to get a bit more money to the seniors, so that perhaps more of them don't have to work. I don't mind if they want to work because they're bored. By all means, go to work. But I don't like the idea of forcing seniors to work, because they've worked their entire lives. They earned that break, right? So just a thought. And that's kind of where I'm at on that. So the other issue is how we have allowed foreign investors to come and buy multiple properties. Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of people that will come in and they'll buy them as well. A couple of different things. One, some people play real estate like the stock market. Here's the thing. If you're buying them and they're remaining empty, that's a big issue. If you're buying a house but you're renting it out, that I'm not so much against. But a lot of times you got, especially foreign investors who will come in. A lot of them will come in and just buy houses and they will sit empty. They'll just wait for the price to go up and maybe they'll sell them at some point, but they're using them as an investment and they're not really utilizing them to the point. And that, if a foreign person is buying a house but not doing anything and just letting it sit empty, well, that's one family who can't have a house. At least if they're renting it, then you've got a family who, can afford to rent in there. And that's another big sentiment too with some of the surveys going on, is that a lot of people are at the point now that they feel they'll be renters for life, because home prices have gotten so out of whack with everyone that a lot of people just can't afford houses. You may be able to afford the mortgage, but it's that down payment that gets you, because you need to save a lot of money. And if you're self-employed, it's even more. So it's a situation that becomes very, very difficult to get into the real estate market that way. Now, there are ways to invest into the real estate market. There are some companies that provide fractional real estate, and I'll definitely cover that on a video sometime in the future, because I think that's absolutely fascinating. And of course, anybody who's been in this community for a while, we all know about REITs. That's another great way to gain exposure. It doesn't help you, though, of course, if you want to live in a place or to call a place your own, other than the fact that, what we're learning through this community is we're learning how to basically save money, how to grow money, how to basically make sure that we're offsetting as the world is pulling us down financially. We're making the right moves investing wise, so that we're staying above board. And that's kind of one of the fantastic things, I think, with this group here. I think a lot of you guys, your money situation is, even though we're heading into dire times, your money situation is getting better and better. It may not reflect in the bank yet because of this coming recession, but your banking knowledge and your banking, and you're also the stocks that you're buying on this big long dip, your high conviction stocks. Those are stocks that are going to rebound and they're going to make you money. So it's kind of a really neat situation that we're in. Now, Jordan here wants to, he doesn't want to gripe or try not to trigger, but in all of this, ODSP recipients get left behind again in housing. Absolutely. So for people who don't know what ODSP is, that's, let me think, I think it's Ontario Disability Supplement Plan or Pension. I think it's plan. So if you have a disability, this is a payment that you would get. And I believe it's around $1,000 a month. So just think about it. If you have a disability that doesn't allow you to work, the government thinks that you can survive on $1,000 a month. That's, I don't know anybody who could survive on $1,000 a month. So that to me is that's not a fair thing. And that's even if you think about the pandemic, when the pandemic was happening and the government was throwing money out left, right, and center, all the people who lost their jobs because of the pandemic were given $2,000 a month. But you know what happened to people who were on like ODSP? Nothing. They were still making $1,000 a month. So they weren't, you know, they weren't any better off. And it just shows that if all of these people who have, and a lot of times, if you have a disability, you may have more needs. When I say more needs, there's maybe more medication, there's maybe more things that you have to have so that you can meet the same standard of living as somebody without a disability. And that, to me, it just gets ridiculous if, you think that a regular able-bodied worker deserves $2,000 a month, but yet you've got this one little group in society that, we're giving them only $1,000 a month to try to eke an existence out on. So yeah, it is absolutely rough. And Jordan, I think this is one of these things that I don't think you should be silent about. It's one of these things that a lot of people don't understand, and I think it's good to always talk a little bit about it. And you can tell a lot about a government and how they treat their senior citizens. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a support program. Okay, not a plan. Okay, there we go. And then we received a letter stating not to apply for CERB or anything else, or they would take it off dollar for dollar from our monthly income. Yeah, and then the danger to that too is that if you had applied for CERB, you technically probably wouldn't even qualify for it. They'd give it to you anyway, and then they might ask you for that money back. And then, I think they forgave a lot of people. You probably would have gotten forgiven, but if they hadn't forgiven you, then you could have been in a situation where you lost your ODSP, and then the government wanted their money back. So you were kind of between a rock and a hard place, which sucks. I got one last story left. We went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but you know what? If a few people who are in here right now walk away saying, oh my God, I didn't realize that people who were disabled were getting such a raw deal, then it was worth going off on that tangent. Anyway, our next topic is, it has to do with crime. There has been a crypto heist. So there is a company in the US, a crypto company named Harmony. So Harmony has had $100 million in digital coins that were stolen from them. And when we talk these digital coins, we're talking ETH, Tether, and USD. And basically how the criminals did it is in crypto, between blockchains, if you want to move stuff between one blockchain to another, you need something. Well, you need a bridge to be able to move. That's what the hackers targeted. They targeted the bridge so that they could steal the money as it's moving from one blockchain to another. Now, this just happened. So, obviously authorities are in there looking. And guess what? A lot of times they find their man, but it could have been a woman who did it. So they find their person. Whoever did this will probably get caught. So crime doesn't pay unless you're a politician. Then I guess perhaps. But yeah, so that's what happened down there with Harmony. And that is just not, it's one of these things that right now there's so much fear in the crypto world that this it adds a little bit more to it. And especially when I found out about this, I think it was CTV was reporting on it. And I was looking at it and they kind of made it sound like the wording was almost like, oh yeah, this is just normal in crypto. It's just very insecure and all the criminals. It's like, no, crypto is not like that at all. And as I said, these guys will probably get caught because it's hard to move stuff around without leaving a footprint on a blockchain. And once your footprint's on the blockchain, your footprint is there forever. All right, Jordan said, the provincial representation in Sarnia is not very reliable for helping us out. There are a few of us advocators in the Sarn Barn. I do not know what the Sarn Barn is, but yeah, absolutely. Stand up for your rights. It's it's the idea of, as Canadians, we live in a very free country. We're very lucky. We don't have a lot of hardships that they have around the world. But as Canadians, we have one hardship that a lot of people around the world don't have, and that is we are taxed. We are taxed beyond taxation, beyond reasonable, and it is ridiculous. Now, I mentioned, I think, in a previous stream, where I lived in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia in Canada has one of the lowest. Um, Basically, it has one of the lowest minimum wages. It also has some of the highest taxes on the provincial side, as well as you've got, well, everybody has the same federal taxes. But one of the things about it is I used to always joke that the reason we were taxed so badly in Nova Scotia was that they didn't want us to have enough money to leave the province. And it was very true. It was very hard to get to accomplish anything in Nova Scotia just because of the taxes. Now, I understand a lot of the taxes on the provincial side are by the simple fact that Nova Scotia is one of these provinces where their population actually decreases every year. And when you go to Halifax, you'd never guess it. But that's because even though the provincial population is decreasing, the Halifax population is increasing. And the reason for that is that all of these tiny little towns all over Nova Scotia, there's no jobs. So these people have no choice. They have to move into the big city to get work, to be able to support their family. So as a result, you get all these little ghost towns around the outer part of the province, and you get a very big booming city. Now, one of the things that has been good for Nova Scotia is immigration, but the problem is, and here is a problem. When the immigrants arrive in Nova Scotia, they soon after learn about places like Toronto and Alberta. And it's almost like Nova Scotia is more or less a stepping stone to get to one of these other better places. And, off to Toronto. So I imagine if you were to talk to a lot of immigrants in Toronto, don't be surprised if some of them said, yes, I started off in Nova Scotia. And that's just one of those things with trying to attract more people. And it's a beautiful place to live here. And here's the reality, though. The reality is if people stayed and the population was booming and the actual provincial population was increasing instead of decreasing, you could potentially see the taxes start to lower a little bit. So you'd have a little bit left over to utilize when it comes to your paycheck, opposed to having to give everything back to the tax man. So anyway, that's just kind of fun. And Jordan's saying Sarnbarn is just a funny name for Sarnia. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Now, I think Sarnia is a rural city, but I'm not entirely 100% sure. So I don't know. Do you guys actually have like farm animals and stuff around the outskirts of Sarnia? Just a question. I don't know. Because then that makes, because when I hear barn, I think of farm animals for whatever reason that is. All right, so we're almost done here today, guys. Few announcements about the channel that we'll do right now. So I want to try something a little bit different this week. Last week, after I did this week, one of the comments I got is from one of my viewers was that basically they said, I don't always have an hour to watch the full live stream. Is there any way you could sort of do a video version of this as well? So I was thinking about that, and it was a good idea. So I'm going to try it. So what I'm going to do is on Saturday mornings, nice and early, like 9 a.m., like I'll film everything and get it all done Friday nights. But I'm going to drop sort of like an abbreviated version of this show. It's not going to be live. It's not going to be like clips or anything from here. I'm going to film something new, just a quick little news blurb. So it'll almost complement the show, but for people who don't have time to come in and spend an hour with me, which saddens me a little bit because I love spending time with you guys, it'll give them a chance to be able to sort of catch up a little bit on the news. So I'm going to try that out this week. Video-wise this week, we have tomorrow's video. It's going to be 7 stocks, blue chips. So 7 blue chip stocks, 7 blue chip hold forever dividend stocks. I think that's how the name went. It's something like that. But so yeah, we're going to pull that out for you tomorrow. Now you'll want to watch that one to the end because I got a bonus stock in there. It's not a blue chip stock, but it's one that kind of ties into some news that's going on. Thursday, I'm going to finally do the deep dive on PPL that somebody had requested. I almost did it last week, but I really wanted to get that rate thing out just because a lot of people were asking me about how rates affect, how the rate increases affect the mortgages and things like that. So I really wanted to get that out. Then the following Monday, I'm this well organized today. The following Monday, I had a request to do something on fire. So fire, we're not talking about burning fire. We're talking about financial independence, retire early. It's a movement. So there's a lot of people who subscribe to this movement. I'm going to break it down, explain all about it, maybe give you some tips on if you do want to do it. I haven't quite scripted out in my head yet how that one's going to go, but that is going to be, of course, next week. Oh, and Jordan has come back with my farm question. We have an animal farm in Cantara Park, as well as some citizens could be considered animals. Okay. Fair enough. I know from taking the bus, every so often you get somebody on the bus who certainly smells like a farm animal. But that's public transit, but it's good for the planet. All right, everybody. So that's about it for today. So that was our show. I want to thank all of you for showing up. To me, it's a great way to spend Sunday afternoon if it's too hot to be outside. And in my case, my studio is air conditioned, so I am cool and loose as a goose down here. So anyway, we will see you guys again next week. I look forward to to another crazy week of news. And we got holidays starting to come out too. So that will all be very interesting to see what happens. Anyway, thank you guys for all dropping in this afternoon. I really had a good time talking to you guys, and we will talk to you again very